While Dr. Campbell was publishing his China study, Dr. Esselstyn was getting some powerful data from the research he'd started in 1985. He began with 24 patients, but 6 had dropped out in the first year, leaving him with a total of 18.
At the end of 5 years, we had follow-up angiograms, and 11 of the group had halted their disease. There was no progression. And there were 4 where we had rather exciting evidence of regression of disease.
These results were astonishing. The diet produced something that medication and surgery never had before: actual reversals of heart disease. The biological mechanism that caused these reversals centers on the lining of our veins and arteries, the endothelial cells.
They are the absolute life jackets of our blood vessels. You're young and you're a teenager, you're healthy. You could spread those out 1 layer thick and you'd have something that would cover 6 or 8 tennis courts.
In 1988, scientists discovered that endothelial cells manufactured the gas nitric oxide.
Well, what does nitric oxide do? Nitric oxide keeps our blood flowing smoothly without being sticky.
It also helps to dilate constricted blood vessels during physical activity and inhibits the formation of plaque.
And most importantly, nitric oxide is a powerful force for eliminating the inflammation that seems to go with this plaque.
However, scientific tests have demonstrated that when we start eating the typical Western diet, our endothelial cells are damaged.
When you're getting to be in your 40s and 50s and 60s and you've been slaughtering your endothelial cells, you don't have those 6 or 8 tennis courts. You may be down to 1.5 or 2, and they can't protect you.
Yet according to Dr. Esselstyn, when we begin eating a whole foods plant-based diet, the damage to our endothelial cells not only stops, it starts to reverse. About 5 years into his study, Esselstyn made a small but significant change in his patient's menu. It started in 1990, when he read the glowing review of Dr. Campbell's China study in the New York Times.
Dr. Esselstyn saw that and invited me to come to a conference he was organizing in Arizona.
These 2 revolutionaries, who up until then had been on similar but separate paths, finally met face to face.
On the one hand, I'm coming from the scientific route, getting some ideas. He's coming from the clinical route and doing some dramatic research. Here's the science, here's the clinical evidence. Put the 2 together is amazing.
When he learned of Campbell's research, Esselstyn removed dairy products from his patient's diet. The results of his ongoing study continued to be impressive, and in 1995, he published a paper detailing them in a noted scientific journal. Yet one of Esselstyn's most remarkable success stories involved a colleague of his at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Joseph Crow.
Actually, I was active, healthy, very busy, mid-40s, absolutely no risk factors at all for any heart problem.
But Dr. Crow, even with what was considered to be a healthy cholesterol level, was actually ravaged by heart disease. This angiogram, taken after his first nearly fatal heart attack in 1996, shows how badly damaged one of his coronary arteries was. This angiogram was done after less than 3 years of entirely dietary treatment. Dr. Crow is fortunate. In 25% of cases, sudden death is the first and only sign of coronary artery disease. Of Dr. Esselstyn's original 18 patients, all survived the initial 12 years of the study. Today, 14 patients are still alive, over 2 decades after the study began.
The thing about Essie, although he's always very pleasant, when you said, I'm going to be on this program and I'm going to stay with this diet, you stayed with the diet or there was the door. You had no choice. I mean, his smiles are wonderful, but he is very stern, you know. That's why I'm still living. But, you know, he's just a wonderful man.
And I look at the pictures, some of my pictures years ago, 20 years ago, actually looks older than today. The only thing is I lost more hair, you know.
Anthony and the other male patients also noted another change.
When you're young, when you're a teenager, you see a female and so on, it gets kind of excited. And the first reaction physically, you know, gets attention, you know. Raise the flag, I call it. This happened to us. All the other Dr. Esselstyn's, I call them all the guinea pigs. The flag still rises.
Talking to your doctor about ED may be the last thing you want to do, but it's definitely a conversation worth having.
I'm a practicing urologist and have been so for the last 25 years. And erectile dysfunction is actually the first clinical indicator of generalized cardiovascular disease. It's the canary in the coal mine. It's the thing that lets you know that you have some significant endothelial and vascular disease much earlier than will a heart attack or something like that. We have to stop thinking of the body like it's compartmentalized. It really isn't. The blood goes everywhere in the body. And so if you have vascular disease anywhere, you have it everywhere.
Despite the apparent success of the dietary approach, some critics say eating this way is extreme.
Now, with the Western diet, this guarantees there are going to be, what, 500,000 people in this country this year who will have to have the front half of their body divided, their heart exposed, then veins will be taken from their leg and sewed on their heart. Some people would call that extreme.
Dr. Esselstyn has now successfully treated over 250 patients with heart disease, using almost exclusively a whole foods, plant-based diet.
Heart disease, as far as I'm concerned, is an absolutely toothless paper tiger that need never, ever exist. And if it does exist, it need never, ever progress.
Las Vegas, Nevada. At the Extreme Couture Gym, we found an extraordinary plant-based athlete, Ultimate Fighter champion Mac Danzig. In the mixed martial arts world, strength, toughness, and endurance are of paramount importance, and Mac has them all.
I had cut dairy out of my diet when I was about 18 years old because I had a ear, nose, and throat allergy to dairy, and I was getting a lot of ear infections and things like that. So when I cut that out, really the only thing that was separating me from having a vegan diet was chicken and fish. So I was just eating that for years, and I was eating it because I thought that I needed to, because everyone tells you, you know, if you're an athlete, you need, you know, at least chicken and fish in your diet for protein. You know, something that's just one of the myths that's been perpetuated for a while. All it took was me cutting the chicken and fish out, and I did it cold turkey. I think a lot of people, stereotypically speaking, think someone that's a vegan is like some skinny, hippie type of person. And, you know, I'm not necessarily trying to break the stereotype. I tried the diet for my own personal reasons, and it worked for me. I feel like I have more energy now that I don't eat the meat products, and I also feel like I recover better in between my workouts. I'm not trying to be part of some exclusive club or anything like that. I'm just doing my thing, and you know, don't plan on eating meat or dairy or anything like that for the rest of my life.
This guide is called the Type A Planning Guide. Now, it includes foods that are found in the basic 4 food groups, because we are concerned about the total daily needs, and this is a part of it.
We must serve 1/2 pint of fresh fluid milk to provide calcium, riboflavin, and the other nutrients that are needed for our children.
For decades, the dairy industry and U.S. government have been saying that milk is good for our bones. While all whole foods contain calcium, an essential nutrient for bone health, it is argued that we need the higher amounts found in dairy. Children and aging women in particular have been singled out to drink more and more and more milk.
What do you think the most important nutrient we get from dairy products is, like milk?
Calcium.
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 Calcium. Calcium. Calcium.
Or calcium.
Calcium.
The science in terms of dairy's role in healthy bones is pretty strong. And in fact, the National Osteoporosis Foundation, of course, utilizes that science in their recommendations.
Osteoporosis is a degenerative bone disease, which has been widely linked to a lack of calcium. If this is true, nations with a high intake of dairy products, which are a major source of calcium in a westernized diet, should have low levels of osteoporosis. But according to a study done by a distinguished Harvard researcher, nations with high levels of calcium intake tend to have high levels of hip fractures, which is a key indicator for osteoporosis.
And so, in fact, the higher the dairy consumption, the higher the rate of osteoporosis. Exactly the opposite of what the dairy industry has been telling us for so long. One of the primary mechanisms for that is that animal protein tends to create an acid-like condition in the body called metabolic acidosis.
To combat this condition, the body draws upon its most readily available acid buffer, namely calcium in our bones. As the calcium is extracted to neutralize the excess acid, our bones are weakened. In defending the health benefits of milk, many national health organizations now recommend that we consume low-fat dairy products.
It can be milk, it can be yogurt, it can be cheese, it can be anything made from milk. But again, the important message, it's a message that comes from the American Dietetic Association, the National Osteoporosis Foundation, cancer, heart. We're all in the same page. It needs to be low fat or fat-free.
So as the fat is taken out, the protein becomes a larger proportion of the total. So they become higher in protein, lower in fat. And when we compare these high protein, low fat milk products, for example, with prostate cancer, the relationship is as strong as it is for cigarette smoking and lung cancer. Most of these animals here are what we call heifers. They're the young females, not yet cows.
So they haven't had their first calf yet.
Haven't had their first calf.
So they have to have their first calf before they can
Once
lactate.
they come into lactation, they almost keep them, these days, they keep them pregnant continuously.
Exactly.
For 3 or 4 years.
Why are they eating grass now?
Well, this is the last time in their lifetime they're going to see grass. After that, they're in the barn, they're standing there for the rest of their life. When I was young, we defended our product, promoted our product, because it was nature's most perfect food. And so I believe that. But it took on a slightly different twist as time passed. I mean, it's the most perfect food for cats. And trying to switch the milk of one species to another species doesn't make a lot of sense.
Only 2 months into her treatment, Sandera was experiencing dramatic effects on her type 2 diabetes and hypertension.
Since I've been on a plant-based diet, blood pressure's been wonderful. My blood sugars are in the 80s. It shocks me, 70s. And so I was alarmed when it was 60. I'm like, isn't that bad? It's 60, you know, and I talked to the diabetes educator, which is wonderful. She's like, no, that's a normal blood sugar. Your pancreas is working, it's reversing.